the consequences of an earlier statement that stirred controversy regarding Nigeria's national budget. Now, this comes as the Northern Senators Forum dissociated itself from Senator Abdul Ningi's allegation of budget padding, describing it as his personal opinion and sentiments that have proven to be incorrect. Now, Senator Ningi, who also insists that he stands by some of his allegations, but says that some of his words were taken out of context. Tijesu Adeoye has more.
There has been a recurring dismal.
All hell was let loose following an earlier statement by Senator Abdul Ningi, representing Bauchi Central, alleging an unexplained 3.7 trillion naira budget padding in the 2024 national budget. This statement had unsettled many members of the Senate who found the claims to be misleading and putting the legislative arm of government in bad light. The Senate had resolved to address the matter at its next legislative sitting on Tuesday, but an impatient Senator Ningi has decided to set the record straight, damning all consequences. He says his claims are hinged solidly on a fact-finding research carried out by a group of consultants.
At no time did I say Bola Ahmed Tinubu is implementing two budgets. There was no time. At no time.
Meanwhile, the Northern Senators Forum, which has Senator Ningi as its chairman, has denied all claims of the lawmaker. They say it is his personal opinion and not the position of the Northern Senators. A lawmaker from Ondo South Senatorial District, Jimo Ibrahim, has also urged the federal government to charge Senator Ningi to court for criminal misinformation and breach of peace in the National Assembly and the country by extension.
So my information to you today is that 1, it is not true that we have 2 appropriations. 2, Senator Ningi must be charged to court for conduct likely going to cause breach of peace.
The presidency had on Sunday described as false a claim by Senator Ningi that the federal government is operating 2 versions of the 2024 budget. All attention now shifts to Tuesday's plenary session, where Senator Ningi's fate will be decided by his colleagues.
And joining us now to discuss this controversy, we bring in from our Abuja studio APC chieftain and a policy analyst, Kasim Afegwa. Thank you for joining us again on TVC Breakfast. So what do you make of...
Thank you.
Thank you indeed for joining us again. But what do you make of this clarification by Senator Abdul Ningi?
Well, thank you very much. I think senators that could be so described as lawmakers have to understand the current sensitivity in the country, the kind of delicate, discussions in the polity. And so when they are coming out in the public to make statements, they have to have their facts at the tip of their fingers. It is often the easier route to take when they have committed a faux pas and all they want is to seek refuge under the claim that they were quoted out of context. The media is often the scapegoat. When they make mistakes, they say they were quoted out of context. I don't think Senator Ningi was right in his claim, because now that he's retracting what he said, it goes to show that he either spoke out of sensationalism or cheap political opposition politics, or was just trying to raise dust where there is none. I know we have to be careful in our public engagements. We have to mind the kind of utterances that come out from the mouth of those who are at the top echelon of leadership in the country. Senator Ningi will not have been quoted out of context because he spoke in Hausa, and there are quite a number of people who can interpret languages, Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo, and all of that. And so if the other northern senators have shown him, that to me is a good reading, from what we expected, because he wanted to play the devil's advocate, trying to stir regional, agitation, kind of saying that the budget is being skewed against the North and all of that. So I think my own take would be to advise Nick not to play to the gallery. He should try as much as possible to put the interests of the country together, the interests of the overwhelming majority of Nigerians, over 200 million people, when you are making, such kind of insinuations. At any rate, budgets, you hardly can implement budgets 100%. Budgets are just estimates and projections of what you intend to do as a company, as a government, at the local, at the state, at the federal level. So whether 25 million, whether 25 trillion, whether 27 trillion, whether 28 trillion, it doesn't matter. What we should be craving for is for budgets to earn some level of respect in terms of implementation, get it to 70% implementation and all of that. So I think that was a careless statement by an opposition senator, Ningi, and I'm happy that he said he was misquoted. Yeah, oftentimes the media becomes a scapegoat. But again, we need to move on, because there are quite a number of issues agitating our minds as a country. And so these are just needless distractions.
All right. Kazim, we'll have to put you on hold for now, but we have a policy analyst, a public affairs analyst here in the studio, Biodun Showomi, who's joining us at this time. Thank you very much for coming, Biodun.
Well, thank you for having me.
So what do you think of these accusations now, budget padding? First of all, in 2016, that was when we knew that word, budget padding. It came into our lexicon politically, and now it has reared its ugly head again. What do you think of Senator Abdul Ningi's accusations?
Well, Senator Abdul Ningi couldn't have been misquoted, and I accurately agree with Kasim. When you look at all the issues involved, it was in the Senate. Tinubu's administration presented a budget of 27.5 trillion naira to the Senate in November, end of November last year. They all continue about it, and by the end of December, I think December 30, the budget was actually approved with an inflated figure of 1.2 trillion. And that took the total budget to 28 trillion and 77. Abdul Ningi was part of that meeting that approved that budget. He knew exactly that there was no figure of 25 trillion on the table in the Senate in the first instance. But that is not where Ningi is going. Ningi is only pulling that to call public attention to his own politics of division, which is the North-South dichotomy. He's going back to the old card, the PDP old card, of divide and rule. And then he tries to public attention by making a false allegation of budget padding. That's exactly where he's going. It's the divisional politics of we and them, North and South, which Ningi is playing.
Why do you think he's going that way?
Oh, he made it very clear. He was making, allusions to the fact that the North was shortchanged. The 3-point-something trillion was not actually tied to any budget. That's exactly where it's going. He's trying to play on the anxiety of some of the people in the North and then justify, the politics of division. That's exactly what Ningi is trying to do. It's not about the money. He knew he was part of that Senate. He knew there was no budget padding. And in any case, if there was any increase in that budget, which you can term to be budget padding, it was actually the Senate, which he participated in, that actually increased the money. So what is Ningi talking about? The goal is not that. The goal is quite obvious. It's still this politics of division. Rather than playing, a distinguished senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, playing the politics of unity, he chose to go on the North-South dichotomy line again, which is quite unfortunate. So I'm not surprised he's trying to see how he can best present his own case in this dilemma, which he has created for himself. It's quite unfortunate that a distinguished senator of the Federal Republic could at least go to this extent. There's nothing wrong. You can criticize Tinubu's administration. There are so many reasons why You can choose to criticize the regime. You can talk about the issues of the economic pains, of the policies, but you have no right to manufacture lies against that government. That is not correct. And coming from a distinguished senator of the Federal Republic is quite unfortunate.
Even though he retracted portions of the statement, including of his earlier interview, including where he said, okay, in reaction to what you said about politics of division emanating from Senator Ningi, he said, well, he didn't mean that that the government was running a divided budget, so to speak, that there were lapses in the budget, portions of the budget favoring the North or the South against the North. But still on this issue of the alleged budget padding, he still insists that 25-point-something trillion naira can be traced to projects, but there is still an elusive 3-point-something trillion that he has yet to be able to trace. That yes, the money is there, but there is nothing in form of project or location for this. People have said it's about 10% now of the 28 trillion naira budget. But what do you think of that? He's still insisting on that.
Well, in my view, we should be asking Ningi on what basis, on what explanation, on what projects were the 3 trillion tied to. He should be the one to answer that question. Because don't forget, it was the Senate, which he was part of, that increased that budget by 1.2 trillion. Is Ningi now telling us that the Senate did not demand to know the projects which all the amounts budgeted in the budgets, are tied to? I don't believe that. It's quite clear that they approved the budget. It's quite clear that they went through a thorough process, that it took a month, before the Senate could approve it. It went through all the necessary processes. It went through the Appropriations Committee of the Senate. So all this will have been checked before it is finally approved. Ningi is only trying to dance around his own shadows. He's not really facing the issue. He was part of the Senate that even increased that budget by 1.2 trillion. So he should have demanded or make his case at that point in time, before the approval.
Okay.
Why did Ningi fail to do so? Is he adequately representing his people? If he's now realizing after a budget has been approved, oh, we forgot to ask what was 3 trillion. Oh, come on.
All right, let's go to Kasim Afegbo in Abuja. Kasim, looking at what we've all said, I'm thinking that shouldn't the presidency rather than, or the legislature rather than bring all these allegations against Ningi, just investigate these matters?
Well, I don't think we need to bother ourselves, resources and all of that, because you want to investigate what? Ningi was part and parcel of the Senate that approved budget. I had the privilege of also attending a couple of the sections where they were doing budget defense. There's a lot of rigorous work that goes into budget writing or budget approval or even appropriation process in any legislature. And that of Nigeria is not an exception. And I witnessed about 2 or 3 sittings of the committees when they call persons from the ministries to come and explain certain budgetary provisions. And so it's ridiculous when, after you have been part and parcel of a process, the budget has been passed, and you are now raising curiosity as to 3-point-something trillion naira, painting the Senate in a rather very bad light. I think when you want to play opposition, you play constructive opposition. From the process of the appropriation, you have to raise queries, you have to raise concerns, you have to challenge the status quo. You have to, put the persons and officers from the various ministries, you put them on the hot seat, interrogate all the provisions they have put into the appropriation process. And if you don't get, satisfactory, response, you channel this into the chairman of the Committee of Appropriation and all of that. Because once a document, a legislation is coming out from the National Assembly, it is understood that it has gone through the entire process of making that legislation and that everybody has synchronized into the entire document. And if you look at the issue of appropriation, they will naturally go to the Committee on Appropriation and they will do budget defense, they will do all of that. So this is the stage where you can raise, it's just like public hearing, on a lot of, laws that you want to make. You subject it to public discussions, public interrogation and all of that. So I think Ningi was trying to stir the hornet's nest. And I don't like it when people who are supposed to be statesmen try to provoke this north-south dichotomy, try to deepen the mutual suspicion, let me put it that way, of all the geopolitical zones. Say this one is this. Let us speak as a country. Let us speak as one Nigeria. Let us own our country. Let us, whatever we do, let us see it. If I'm putting up a structure in Kaduna, let me see it as a Nigerian project, not necessarily a northern project. It's what is affecting a lot of, performance index, a lot of initiatives that you are supposed to drive and all of that. Let's see the country as one. So Ningi was trying to play on the sentiments of his fellow northern senators, but I'm sure he's disappointed now because they've disowned him. I was listening to the statement they issued earlier yesterday, saying that Ningi is on his own. And so when people come to the public to make statements, they have to be sure that they are making the right statements and they are ready to defend. Why is he crying? He's ready to be suspended. And like one senator said, no, he should fear God. Because, you see, appropriation, these are all technical details because we are talking about figures here. And when you say 3.something trillion is not captured or anything, what the senators are explaining, but that your first line charge is lumped into the general services. And so what kind of specific budget do you want to see? At any rate, I must commend this government because I was seeing in that budget that 9.something trillion is on recurrent, almost the same 9.something trillion is on capital project, 8.something trillion on debt servicing. You see, it's always difficult to even marry the capital and recurrent together because oftentimes it is like 80-20% ratio. In previous government, I remember Godswill lamented so much that we are eating too much in our recurrent and capital is suffering. But now I think there's there's semblance of balance. And so these are the nitty-gritty. These are things you should interrogate. But by the time you start looking at where projects are located, what they are tied to, on the basis of ethnicity, geopolitical divide, and all of that, you'll be missing the point completely because we are talking about Nigeria. We're not talking about northern Nigeria. We're not talking about southern Nigeria, eastern Nigeria, western Nigeria. We're talking about Nigeria as a country. Anything that is captured anywhere, we should see it as Nigeria. That sense of national cohesion and patriotism is what senators and lawmakers should put in mind when they are coming to speak in the public with respect to issues of appropriation or any other issue for that matter.
Right. Let's come back to the studio now to get Mr. Showumi's take on these calls for investigation. Some have said, just like the Senate is also due to investigate the 30 trillion naira advances on ways and means during the past administration. Should this also be another opportunity when they reconvene today for them to agree for an investigation of this? Well, you say it's a belated observation on the part of Senator Ningi, but what do you think?
There are two different issues. When you look at the issue of the 30 trillion ways and means borrowed by the federal government under Buhari, there are two issues involved in that. One is the issue of printing naira, to spend, to borrow. You print naira and then borrow it out without tying it to any productive activity. The second issue is that the CBN, under the CBN Act of 2007, does not have the power, to even loan anything more than 5% of the previous year's revenue to the federal government. And in any case, that money must be recovered within a year. By the end of that year, and we now have that ballooning to 30 trillion, of course, clearly in violation of the law. That's a different thing. In this Ningi's case, if you permit me to use that word, In this Ningi's case, that's a totally different thing. There is no allegation of any infractions against the Senate or against the federal government. Ningi is only playing on the fears. He hoped to exploit the fears and anxiety of some senators. Unfortunately, he got that wrong. The senators from the north seems not to see his point and say, no, hang on a minute, we've looked into this issue. There's nothing in here. We approved this same budget, and you are part and parcel of it. So what are you asking? What are you demanding for? Which explanation? They themselves, the Senate itself, will not even comprehend what Ningi is asking for. Ningi is not about the issue of the 3 trillion, which is claiming, or over 3 trillion, which is claiming is not tied to any project. He has not said that money was misappropriated or was stolen. No, that's not what Ningi is claiming. Ningi is playing a card, which is the old politics of North-South divide. He is not talking about the unity of the country. He is only willing to exploit that, hoping to push his cause, as a member of the opposition. There's nothing wrong, with opposing the Tinubu's administration. You can oppose any regime, that's fine, but it must be constructive. It must not be based on falsehood. So what is there to be investigated? No allegation of misappropriation, no allegation of any infraction. What Ningi is saying is that 3 trillion is not tied to a project. What is there to be investigated?
So you think this is this dust will be sufficiently settled when they reconvene today?
Obviously. There's nothing to investigate. If there is, look, they have approved a budget. Government needs to implement that budget, then the National Assembly to carry out their oversight functions. So it is in the process of carrying out their oversight functions, they can now say, hang on a minute, there is this 3 trillion naira, what did you spend it on? Which we approved for you. They have not gotten to that stage. The budget is early in the year. We are just in March. So what is there to be investigated? Absolutely nothing. What is only the process of carrying out oversight functions that other issues can crop up because they have already approved that budget. So Ningi is only using the issue, raising concerns around the budget to call attention to his own divisive politics. And unfortunately, most members of the Senate, distinguished members of the Senate, fail to agree with him.
Why do you call it divisive? What do you think he's trying to achieve?
Look, we should be seeing ourselves as Nigerians. We are one country. When you begin to talk along the North-South dichotomy, then what do you think you're doing? That is exactly what he's doing.
You think
he should be representing the country and not, focusing on his ethnic or his region.
So you don't think he has genuine concerns as regards the budget?
I don't really think so. If you look at that budget, there are projects everywhere. Everywhere. So, and if he has any concerns, he should have raised that at the stage of before approval, which he fails to do. So that should be his own feeling. And in any case, most senators won't agree with him because virtually all zones in this country have either road construction or major constructions in that budget. There are provisions for it. Anybody can pick up the budget, just go and Google it and have a look. And then you begin to ask yourself, what is Ningi talking about? Ningi is only playing, is only being mischievous. He's only playing, the North-South dichotomy card. And that's all. He's only calling attention. When you make an allegation of infractions, financial infractions, people tend to be more interested. But he's only using that to call attention, to play his own politics.
Let's probe Kasim Afegwa, deeper. You both have spoken about this, divisions that we are seeing, this North-South divisions that we are seeing. And this is not even the first time that it will even emanate from the body of the lawmakers, the Senate, that is. Earlier on, there was the issue of relocation of some federal agencies from the north to the south, and then, major talking heads, major senators spoke out on the matter, alleging that the playing the North-South card, just as you both have said. But where do you see this all going? And you have both expressed some level of concerns. How do you think it can be curbed, especially within the echelons of the Senate?
Well,
The
thank
question
you.
is for
You know,
Mr.
the
President.
Senate is made up of 109 senators. Yes, the Senate is made up of 109 senators, drawn from all the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. That means it's a complete representation of all the divergences, disparities, intricate logic of the Nigerian Federation, no matter how skilled our federalism is. And so if you have an assembly of 109 members of Nigeria, that on its own should promote some level of unity, because you have an opportunity to interact, exchange ideas, and also interrogate issues from the perspective of a country and not from the perspective of parochial considerations. You see, we need to deliberately and consciously try to promote national cohesion. It is not all the time that we defer to our ethnic conclave because we want to make a point. It's just like the issue of the CBN trying to relocate one department of its structure to Lagos for the simple reason that the Lagos structure is just lying there fallow, and so we can do and achieve a lot of things because the headquarters of all the banks are in Lagos. So why would you now sit in Abuja as the seat of federal capital and be doing things when we can sit right in Lagos to do this? It raised all manners of fears. Oh, this is restructuring by other means. This is that. Citizens must try as much as possible to look at the bigger picture. We are talking about how to grow our country. We are talking about how to deepen democracy. We are talking of how to even help promote unanimity of purpose in terms of how we work and the kind of results we expect. If taking certain departments of the CBN to Lagos will make CBN to perform better and utilize all the structures, better, then the good for the country. But the moment we start reading sentiments, ethnic sentiments, parochial sentiments into some of these things, we will be missing the point altogether. And that is one of the bane of Nigeria, one of the bane. See, let me tell you, just make a point now that you want to establish a 7-star hospital in Nigeria. If you don't locate one in every geopolitical zone, so to speak, you will not see, that particular project will not see the light of the day, because the issue of location can take another 3 years discussing. Oh, let it be here, let it be there, let it be there. We still don't see, there's a missing link in our nationality. There's a missing link. We still don't see ourselves as one. We still view Nigeria from the ethno-religious prism. We still see Nigeria from the pigeonhole of where are you coming from or where do you come from, even within Nigeria. It's only when you go outside Nigeria that people ask you, where are you from? They say you are from Nigeria. But in Nigeria, when you ask the question, they will tell you, they will not say, well, I'm a Nigerian. No. They will say, I'm from the north, I'm from the south, I'm from the east, I'm Igbo, I'm Idoma, I'm this, I'm that, I'm all that. See, we can marry all of these disparities, ethnic conclaves and ethnic multiplicities, configurations. We can marry them into a suitable package that will further and deepen the discussion of national cohesion. And the Senate and the House of Rep is a good platform for us to subsume all of those sentiments and look at the bigger picture, because we're talking about 360 360 House of Representation. We are talking about 109 senatorial representation. And this is a combination of all the states in Nigeria and the FCT. And so for want of, playing the devil's advocate, people would normally want to stir the honest nest just to provoke a discussion along these ethnic lines. In the 21st century Nigeria, that one should be looking beyond all of this. So for whatever it takes, democracy is a very, very resourceful platform for you to interact, constructively engage, and collectively bargain on issues that will affect the generality of Nigerians. We're talking about 200-something million people. They are not located in one particular zone of the country. They are located across all the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. 109 senatorial district and 360 federal house representation. And so please, we need to continue to discuss this issue of our nationality. We need to continue to drum it loud in the ears of those who are even representing us, that in making laws, to look at the bigger picture, the country, and not necessarily where you come from. Because it's only in Nigeria you see certain laws being made for the interest of one person and not for the overall interest of the country. But in on this issue of budgeting, this budget covers the entire country. That must be said. And this budget went through a rigorous exercise. I've told you I witnessed like 3 or 4 of those sittings. Out of my curiosity, I wanted to know what goes on. I went to the National Assembly. I listened to the senatorial committees and how our persons were coming from ministry to defend their budget. I remember questions being asked severally. Some of these things are very robust. And the way they won't ask questions, because House of Rep and Senate are made out of people who are professionals in different fields. And they are quite enlightened in the kind of work they do. That's the truth. But if you don't go there, you may not even know the quality of what they invest in those discussions. So I want to appeal to members of Senate and members of the House of Rep that please, you may want to play your sentiment, please look at the bigger picture of Nigeria. Let us begin to create a peaceful coexistence amongst all our persons and factors so that collectively we can build a nation. If we want to move ahead as Nigeria, we need to bury all of these sentiments and look at the bigger picture. But if we want to separate, we want to segregate, we also have to work out the modalities. But I'm tired of hearing sentiment of North-South divide, East-West this, East-West. See, for God's sake, let us see how we can deepen our conversation around national cohesion and nationality.
Okay, Biodo, looking at all Kazim has said, what do you think is the impact of all of these allegations on the mindset of Nigerians?
It's quite unnecessary distraction. When you look at an average Nigerian, they will see through it. Look, there's nothing in it. The budget is new, it's just been implemented. Even we don't even have all the resources to implement that budget, currently. And the Ministry of Finance will still need to sort some funds, because it's a deficit budget. So they still need to look for the funds, to implement it. And it's not, no budget is ever implemented 100% anywhere in the world. They're just projected estimates of what you think you spend. So in any case, many Nigerians will see through it. They will know it's quite, there's nothing to it other than Ningi trying to play the North-South divide politics of the hold, which is not today's politics any longer. Of course, there are issues which Nigerians are going through. They are experiencing some economic pain, but everybody understands that these are necessary measures, necessary to be taken in order to save our country from economic collapse. And therefore, I think within that context, many Nigerians would understand that Ningi is trying to play up on people's anxiety, on their experiences and all that, and therefore trying to situate it within a geopolitical, politics. And they will see through it.
But don't you think it could also have a negative impact? Looking at the pattern, the unprecedented pattern of the last elections, you got many people talking. It was divisive, so to speak. The religion, it was drawn along religion, ethnicity, and the likes. And for somebody of a reputable office as a senator, to come and be speaking yet again on this issue of tribalism and the likes. Don't you think it could have some adverse impact?
Yeah, quite unfortunate. We all thought we've drawn a line behind it because we all have lessons to learn from what happened at the last elections and how emotions, were so high.
Unchecked, right.
So we knew that is not the right path, and that is not good for our country. We all know that. Many Nigerians agree on this. And now we now have a government trying to rebuild, the social fabrics, to rebuild the economy. And then suddenly you have a distinguished senator of the Federal Republic named Abdul Ningi, now trying to take us back to the old politics of North-South divide, a politics of division. I don't think many Nigerians will agree to that. And many Nigerians, including senators, will actually condemn it. And that is why we must applaud our distinguished senators from the North who actually told Ningi, you are on your own on this project. We are not with you. They want a new Nigeria. They want to look at issues constructively rather than playing negative politics.
Okay. Also, Mr. Fegboa, there is a call even from the senator, a fellow senator, that's Jimoh Ibrahim, calling for a prosecution of Senator Ningi, if at all. Now, first of all, what's your take on that? He's talking about allegations of criminal misinformation, leveled at the feet of Senator Ningi. But looking at the bigger picture, do you also subscribe to our senators being this form of reprimanding or punishment, so to speak, for senators who err? Because, as we said earlier on, the Senate is going to reconvene today, and this is has been said to be one of the issues for discussion before the Senate will now come up with a united front, so to speak, on the matter. But where are you on this call for prosecution of erring senators, this time around on Senator Ningi?
Well, first and foremost, we must establish that the Senate is called the hallowed chamber. Hallowed because of the seriousness of the business that they transact in terms of lawmaking. And lawmaking is what defines society, and that it is what also makes the society orderly. Because if there are no laws to present the level playing field for all citizens, then there will be anarchy. So when you have a lawmaker of the status of a senator making unguarded statements that have the capacity to create divisions in the country, to provoke ethnic sentimentalism, then such a senator, by his own rules, by the rules of the Senate, have the right to be investigated and appropriate punishment meted to him. Because if you don't use his own case as an example, to teach others how to behave being a senator, in the near future, someone can also play up such ethnic card and sentiments to cause a lot of concerns across the country. Nigerians are so fragile now because of the crisis in the land, insecurity, this, that. But the lawmaking arm of government must deliberately try to see how they can mutually engage the executive arm and promote symbiotic relationship that will help move the country forward. But when they are often distracted by statements and sentiments that are born out of trying to create division, then we'll be getting needless distraction from the real challenges facing us. I don't think our problem now is about 25 trillion naira budget. Our problem is about how to get resources to implement at least 70% of that budget. If that budget could be implemented 70%, we are going to make a whole lot of breakthrough. But the Ningi is not looking at that. He's looking about a particular miraculous 3.something trillion that only him alone can explain. And he's not bothered about the 25 or 26 trillion that will be left and all that. We should be looking at the bigger picture of where do we get money in view of what the present government inherited from his predecessor, and in view of cries all over the country about, economic doldrums and what have you. So I would support Senator Jimoh Ibrahim's admonition that Ningi should be put into the witness box. Let us interrogate him and let us investigate him. They should refer him to their Ethics and Privileges Committee to, take a deeper look into what he meant. And if he's found wanting in terms of the way he has spoken, he spoke in Hausa, it can be interpreted easily and all that. Every Nigerian language can be interpreted both in a denotative manner and a connotative manner. And so we will be able to rationalize what he actually meant by the claims he presented. And so that way, we can chart a roadmap forward. But for God's sake, please, I always pray that we promote nationalistic patriotism rather than deferring to ethnic sentimentalism in the course of making laws for the good governance of this country.
All right. We thank you very much, Kasim Akpabio, for your contributions on TVC Breakfast this morning. Let's come back to get final thoughts from Mr. Biodun Shoumi on this matter.
Well, I think
he has said he's ready for suspension. That's Ningi.
Yes, he's asking for that. He knows he deserves to be suspended by the Senate. He knows. He knew the impact of the import of what he's trying to do. But the fact of the matter is we should not be prejudicial. We should allow the Senate Ethics and Privileges Committee, to look into the issue, and then make their own recommendation to the Senate.
All right. We thank you very much, Biodun Shoumi, and of course joining us from our Abuja studio, Kasim Akpabio. Thanks to you both, gentlemen, for speaking with us on TVC Breakfast this morning. Before we go, the views and reactions of all our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. From all of us here, thanks to you all for keeping us company. Thanks for watching. We have another date, hopefully the Wednesday edition of TVC Breakfast. Do join us then. Up next is Your View with the ladies.